So, good morning, everyone. Now we can start our programs. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Ahmed Monirus Salehin, Senior Secretary, Minister of Expertise, Welfare and Overseas Employment, Government of the Republic of Bangladesh. Honorable Guest of Honor, Dr. Bernd Speiner, Deputy Head of Missions, the Delegation of the European Union to Bangladesh. And we have the Honorable Chair of the sessions, Professor Atikul Islam, Vice Chancellor, North South University. Ladies and gentlemen, and good morning, and thanks for coming to the National Seminar on Migration, Mobility, and Development in a Globalized World, organized by the Center for Migration Studies, North South University. On January 17, 2022, the same day, the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of NHCU established the Center for Migration Studies. To date, it is the only center in Bangladesh at both private and public universities devoted to research, policy, advocacy in the larger context of migrations and refugee studies. Under the leadership of Professor Atikul Islam Sir, Vice Chancellor of the North South University, the directions of Professor S.K. Tawfiq Haq of SIPG, an advisor of the CMS, Professor Ambassador Sohidul Haq, and we have been working diligently and consistently to ensure the quality of our research work in the field of migrations. The CMS primary visions are to provide information on migrations and to advance human rights and justice for individuals who are migrating for humanitarian reasons. The center's major mission is to become the foremost regional think tank on migration issues by bringing together academics, scholars, researchers, and practitioners to create, acquire, and share knowledge that is useful and that informs policy. I would like to inform our audience that in the first year of the CMS, we have carried out 3 research projects on migrations, including the cross-border migration from the South Asian countries to Bangladesh, climate change-induced migrations, and the student migration from Bangladesh, Nepal to developed countries. 3 policy views have already been published by the CMS, and the King Faisal Research Center in Saudi Arabia, National University of Australia, the Kalingan Institute of Social Science in India have all accepted our research papers that we have produced. Our colleagues have already committed to publishing this research in the reputed international journals, and they will be attending a conference shortly to present their research findings in Australia and Saudi Arabia. Many of our research findings have already been published in op-ed in the Daily Pratham Alo, to which readers both online and offline have responded very positively. CMS is now closely collaborating with the International Organization for Migration, IOM, on a research project titled Assess and Review of National and Sectoral Policy to Identify Gaps in Policy Governance, Mainstream Migrations, as well as a study on examining the social capital in Bangladesh Migrant Worker Rural Communities supported by the Swiss Agency for Cooperation and Development, OSDC. I would like to exchange a few informations with our Deputy Head of Missions, sir, that while the CMS is the only 1 year old, but its members have worked on many years on the migration issues. And they've been engaged with the many European Union's Commission-supported projects. For example, our members were involved in the EU-funded projects such as the final evaluation of Tibet Reform Program, whose implementing partner was the ILO. Also, our member engaged with the ILO Skill 21 project, engaged with the final evaluation of the Protasha project, which was being implemented by the IOM, and also engaged as a Rome evaluation for GLOAC project, and the NSDA project on the opportunities, challenges for establishing a mutual recognition agreement for the skill recognition and the certifications between Bangladesh and the selected EU countries. So we are expecting now a close collaboration with your office, sir. And finally, I would like to thank you everyone who has attended this event. I believe that today's presentation will provide some new insight into the migration issues. And thank you so very much once again. And now I would like to request Dr. Abdul Wahab, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science and Sociology, North South University, and the CMS member to preside over today's national seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jalal, for your wonderful speech. And the guests are here. Maybe the room looks empty, but a lot of participants joined online. These days, you see that like the hybrid mode, some people don't feel like to come to physically join here. joining online. So both online and offline things happening. So I think Dr. Jalal's speech perfectly set up the tone for today's program. And as you know, this is an anniversary event, and we expect a festive atmosphere in this room and also among participants joining online. We know that the role of moderator is very challenging, particularly managing timing for every speaker. I'll try my best to manage this task appropriately and effectively. Before I get into the details of the program, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the National Seminar on Migration, Mobility, and Development in a Globalized World. We have a remarkable lineup of speakers and experts today who will be sharing their insights on this critical and timely subject. We are honored to have with us our chief guest, Dr. Ahmed Munir Salihin, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Expatriates, Welfare and Overseas Employment, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. A cordial welcome to you, Dr. Salihin. Our guest of honor supposed to be His Excellency Charles Watley, the Ambassador and Head of Delegation of the European Union in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, he's unwell this morning. That's why we have with us Dr. Bernd Spanier, Deputy Head of Mission, the Delegation of the European Union in Bangladesh. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Bernd Spanier. Leading to our proceeding today is Professor Atikul Islam, the Vice Chancellor of North-South University. Our VC sir just returned from an overseas trip last night. He'll be joining with us in about 30 minutes from now. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Selim Reza, Associate Professor in the Department of Political Science and Sociology at North-South University. We welcome you, Dr. Selim. We are also privileged to have two esteemed discussants with us today, Professor Shahidul Haq from SIPZ, North-South University, and Dr. Saida Rojana Rashid, Professor of International Relations at Dhaka University. We welcome both of you to our program today. In the second part of this program, we have a book launching event where we'll share a recently published book that explains Rohingyas, a tale of a vulnerable community, edited by our members of CMS. We're fortunate that two editors of the books are here today, and they will share very briefly their valuable insights of the book. For that, we have with us Professor S.K. Tawfiq M. Haq, Chair, Department of Political Science and Sociology, and Director, CMS. And joining online, Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui, Associate Professor, PSS, and Director, Confucius Institute. Thank you for joining with us. Now, let's take a look at the agenda for today's program. We'll begin with the keynote address by the keynote speaker for 10 minutes. That's the modality of this program today. So the keynote speaker will have 10 minutes, followed by remarks from our two discussants. They will get 5 minutes each. This will be followed by question and answer if time permits. If don't, then we'll stop that session as well, where we'll encourage the audience, both online and offline, to ask questions to our speakers, and they will respond to this question. Let me begin by introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Selim Reza, an Associate Professor of Sociology at North-South University, previously served as Assistant Professor and Coordinator of Development Studies at the Asian University of Women, where he played a pivotal role in designing and developing an in-service Master of Education program and directed the Summer School of Science and Mathematics in 2023. His extensive professional background includes teaching at Flinders University, Australia, and Breck University, Bangladesh. Dr. Selim started his career as a field researcher and eventually progressed to Research and Communications Officer at the Refugee and Migratory Movements Research Unit. We call them RAMRU at Dhaka University. His work at RAMRU included contribution to the UK-funded Migrating Out of Poverty Research Program Consortium, engaging in research on migrations, poverty reducing, and development impacts in Africa and Asia. Recognizing his commitment to research for development, he received a Commonwealth Professional Fellowship in 2013 at the University of Sussex, UK. He aimed at enhancing the leadership capacity in Southern-led research. The title of his keynote speech is Gambling on Life Sciences in Europe, Bangladeshi Migrants' Irresistible Journey of Dreams, Perils, and Remittance. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Selim. You have 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wab, for nice introduction and welcoming me. Honorable chief guest, honorable guest of honor, respected discussants, the chair of the session, and the other participants. Assalamu alaikum and good morning. The keynote speech is titled Gambling on Life Chances in Europe, Bangladeshi Migrants' Irresistible Journey of Dreams, Perils, and Remittances. The reason why this title has been used for this research is because this research explores different kinds of dimensions and motivations for irregular migration to Europe. So the research that I'm going to present is basically an original research that aims to explore why the young people are migrating to Europe through irregular means and routes. And that is why this research is unique, and this research has an important impact on the literature on migration studies that really look into different aspects of irregular migration. So the research that my keynote speech is built upon was conducted by me and my colleague, Dr. Jalaluddin Shikhar. And we have used a mixed method approach for doing this research. And we surveyed 100 returning migrant workers who have returned from different situations in Europe. Some of them are returning from Europe without having employment. Some of them attempted to enter into Europe, but finally they have not been able to be successful in entering in Europe. And some returned after entering into Europe and after working for some time, and then spending some time in the detention center. And we collected data from 5 different districts in Bangladesh, and it took almost 1 year to collect data from these hard-to-reach people. As you know, like the people who are irregular migrants and who return from irregular migration, they are often very difficult to reach out. And that is why it took a long time, almost 1 year, from August 2021 to July 2022. And we used snowball sampling techniques to reach out these migrant workers through assistance from different kinds of well-known civil society organizations and NGOs who are working on migration, such as Refugee and Migratory Movements Research in RAMRU, Warby Development Foundation, BRAC Migration Program, and others. So the theoretical foundation of this research is based on German sociologist Max Weber's concept of life census. I'm sure that many of you know about the concept, and the concept talks about an individual's opportunities or capabilities to enhance his or her economic condition. And we all understand that human beings are by nature born to have that kind of motivation for exploring opportunities to strengthen their economic condition. And we acknowledge that migrants work as agents of globalization, and the globalization is not possible without the contribution of migrants, and more particularly their economic contribution. And many of you have already heard that Bangladesh's foundation is substantially based on the remittances sent by the migrant workers. And we always attribute remittance as one of the proud things that we are achieving at the moment. So while migrants are seen so positively and their contributions are so important for development, then why we are talking about the irregular migration? This is because irregular migration has become an increasing concern for the contemporary world. And irregular migration means a movement that takes place outside the regulatory norms of the sending, transit, and receiving country. And we can see that different kinds of statistics show that there are more than 280 million international migrants in the world, and many of them, almost 15 to 20% of them, are irregular migrants. And International Organization for Migration, IOM, has recently worked on that statistics, and they show that almost 30 to 40 million people in the contemporary world are having irregular migration status. And in case of Bangladesh, we can see that many people are migrating every day, and Bangladesh has achieved many positive growth in terms of sending migrant workers. But at the same time, we can see that the dark side of that is many people are still migrating through unauthorized routes, and they remain undocumented, and they face different kinds of humiliation, abuse, exploitation, and slavery-like conditions when they are really successful to enter into their target countries. And that is why irregular migration is so important, and irregular migration is a key concern for the policymakers, academics, and the researchers. So now, if we really look at Bangladesh, then it is a very important idea to look at why people are migrating and why people are taking the risks of their life to migrate irregularly. And we can see that different kinds of routes have become popular among the migrant workers who like to enter into Europe. And Europe has an image as a developed part of the world. And Europe serves that image as part of modern living because of their natural exploration, because of different kinds of economic activities and economic prosperity. And that is why many Bangladeshi people are interested to enter into Europe through irregular routes. And I'm sure that many of you have already seen different kinds of newspaper articles on how many people are migrating and how many people are really getting different kinds of precarious conditions after entering into Europe. We can see that only in 1 year, in 2020, almost 4,510 people from Bangladesh migrated irregularly in Europe by sea or by land. And if we really look at the cumulative picture of the total statistics, we can see that in just a decade, starting from 2009, we can see that almost 63,000 people entered into Europe by land, by sea, or by using both means to migrate irregularly. And different kinds of reports are showing the death of irregular migrants in the Mediterranean Sea or in transit are also very common to us. And we can see that people are really taking the risks of their life to enter into Europe. So why they are migrating? What are their aspirations and what are their motivations? And in particular, why the young people are so interested to migrate to Europe by irregular means? That is the purpose of this research. And in order to explore the answers to these questions, we conducted this research, as I said before, and this research shows that out of 100 returning migrants that we interviewed and we worked with, only 4% were from nuclear families, and the rest were from extended families. And that means the people who are interested to migrate irregularly, they are having a very vulnerable family background because of income, because of socioeconomic status, and because of their social engagement. And 94% were unmarried. And by saying that, we can say that most of these people are young, and they did not have that kind of serious family commitment, or they did not feel that they have got serious commitment to their family or to their society. And that is why they thought that they would migrate to Europe by irregular means. And more interestingly, 62% of the migrants' households had at least one member who was residing overseas. That means the migrants were really familiar with the concept of migration, how the migration process works, and what is the benefit of migration, and what can be achieved by migrating overseas. And in terms of age, we can see that most of the people are from between 21 to 64 years, and average age was around 37 years. And whenever they started to migrate to Europe, their average age was around 28 years. And we can also say that we found some migrant workers who were as young as 17 to 20 years old whenever they first attempted to enter into Europe. And education-wise, most of them are not that very educated. Almost 75% of them completed just their high school education, or not even the high school education, class 8. And 15% had SSC or HSC degree, and only 10% had either completed their university level education or have already been in the process. And there are popular routes that we have been able to explore as well. As you can see on the slide, that some are going from Dhaka to Dubai and then Turkey to Greece, and some are going from Dhaka to Iran and then Turkey and Greece, and some are going from Dhaka to Dubai and then Sudan or Ethiopia and then Tunisia and then Italy. So there are several modes of transport that are involved in that immigration process. And we found 14 countries in Europe that were the key targets for the young people who are migrating irregularly. So whenever we are talking about the motivations and dreams that why these people are migrating, we did not find one specific goal that can be attributed to irregular migration. Rather, we found multiple types of motivations or multiple types of goals that were really triggering the interest for migrating overseas. And we can see that most of the migrants were thinking that Europe has an excellent and bright future. And Europe's economic prosperity will never be stopped. And that means if I can enter into Europe, that means I will also have an excellent and bright future. And that is one of the key motivations that we have found. And we have also found that in Europe, there are many Bangladeshis living, and their living also shows a cultural exchange and a very well-established immigrant community. And that is why most of the people thought that going to Europe means staying connected with the Bangladeshi people and Bangladeshi migrants, and in case of any help, I'll be able to get those benefits from them. So the 4 key aspirations or 4 key motivations that we are able to identify by doing this research were, number 1, opportunities for improved conditions, asylum, and legal status in Europe. So the migrant workers we interviewed, most of them are saying that if we could get in Europe by any chance, then there are ample opportunities that we will be able to utilize for achieving asylum or citizenship or legal status in Europe. And many of them attributed the open door immigration policies of European Union. And some said Europeans are kind enough, generous enough, and that's why they don't send back the irregular migrants. And that means if we can really make it, then we will be able to achieve a legal status or asylum or some sorts of permanent nature of citizenship in Europe. And by saying that, they say that that's a very big success in life. And that means if we can really take the risk of life and we can really get that kind of opportunity, that will be really nice for them to overweigh the risks or potential consequences rather by migrating to Europe. And the second thing that we found was somehow related to education and overall quality of education and the return of education. And you would be surprised to know that almost 1/3 of the migrant workers reported that they were confused about the benefits of education, of the returns of education. They were quite puzzled to think that what kind of things they will be able to achieve by doing this education, by completing this education. And they attributed that Bangladesh has an uncertain future. And almost more than half of the participants, 52% of the participants, were not happy with the economic progress or economic situation in Bangladesh. And 7% of the migrants were not happy with the political situation and political developments in Bangladesh. And that is why they say that their family members are influencing them continuously to migrate to Europe to escape from these frustrating economic and political situations in Bangladesh. And the third motivation that we found was related to an adventure and a socio-psychological nature of human being, a socio-psychological motive of human being. And many young migrants, they say that I just want to go to Europe. I just want to take the risk of my life to enter into Europe because I want to see the beauty of Europe. You know, Europe is really beautiful. And many of them said that Europe is the best example of modernity. And Europe is the best example of modern lifestyle, and I want to taste it for some time at least. And some had misconceptions that if they can really manage to enter one country in Europe, they would be able to have European Union style lifestyle so that they can migrate from one country to another country without hassle. And that's how they will be turned into a global citizen after migrating in Europe. And the last thing that we found as a motivation was social media. So social media was really putting an important influence on the migrant workers. We have found that different kinds of social media networks, social media platforms, and more particularly travel vlogs that were really influencing the decision for irregular migration, particularly on the young migrants. And many migrants told us that, look, I have seen in this blog, which was showing the waterfall in Europe, and I wish I could go there. And they were also saying that since they are young, this is the perfect time for them to take risks of their life to explore the idealized Europe. And social media was really impacting on the communications between the migrant workers and the smugglers or human traffickers or intermediaries or dalals, as we can see, because social media platforms really work very well in putting the original identity of a person in disguise. And that really helped the brokers to have different kinds of images and different kinds of identities to contact the migrant workers who are interested to migrate to Europe irregularly. So in conclusion, I would like to say that, yeah, Max Weber was very right, that individuals have a very natural instinct to explore opportunities for economic benefits or to achieve economic success in a human life. But at the same time, migration has been oversimplified and migration has been presented as a very positive phenomenon in Bangladesh, which has really worked as a stimulant for the young people to migrate illegally or in irregular ways to Europe. And that is something that we will need to work together on. And we can also see that young people have a very serious desperation to leave the country by attributing different kinds of economic developments and political developments to frustration and dissatisfaction. And that is what we also need to work with. And if we can really work on a very right-based approach to ensure safe migration and protected migration for the young people, that will really help us to reduce vulnerability. And that will also help us to emerge as a country which can really work as a reference for safe migration. So my final call will be to protect the youth, protect the young people, and we can do that by ensuring safe migration and by ensuring better mobility, and thus by ensuring that we all are working together for a better country in the age of globalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Selim, for your wonderful presentation. I think the theoretical approach he used, Max Weber, he developed the idea of life sciences, but he never thought about the gambling part, because this morning when you wake up, we saw the news, 61 fear date crossing from Lebanon to other part of the world. You can see that's been happening. That's the risk people taking. And out of, I guess, 85 migrants on a boat and capsized and they feared dead. So that's the risk they are taking. So I do have a lot of questions. Similarly, a lot of people here will have a lot of questions as well. So before coming back to the question answer session, we do have two esteemed discussant. I would like to call the first discussant is Dr. Saida Rojana Rashid, who is a professor of international relations at the University of Dhaka. Dr. Rojana obtained her MSc in forced migration from the Refugee Studies Center, University of Oxford, with a Chevening scholarship, and completed her PhD in migration studies from the University of Sussex, UK, with funding from DFID. She has more than 20 years of research experience on forced and voluntary migration. She has written extensively on migration refugee issues. Labor migration, refugees, gender, youth, social protection, risk, and livelihoods are among her area of research interest. I would like to invite Professor Rojana Rashid to share your insight on this topic. Thank you. You have around 5 to 6 minutes, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, many thanks for inviting me in this occasion. It's an opportunity and a matter of, great pride that I can participate here. 5 minutes is is nothing for providing, insights and inputs, and also giving my comments, review comments. I would say this is a very timely kind of discussion. Irregular migration has been happening from Bangladesh over the last 3-4 decades, but it was never been, such a matter of discussion. It's only for the last 10, 20 years, that last 15 years, since 2015, we are seeing that lot of discussion on the matter, and now it has become a matter of national importance, of course, and also the researchers are very interested to know the drivers, the consequences, and the dreams and perils of these migrants, because the evidence of their, their plights, evidence of their shattered dreams, we can see every day, as discussed, just as mentioned before. So in terms of the objectives, aims and objectives of the paper, definitely it will fill some of the research gap that exist regarding irregular migration, and why these people are actually interested to go in irregular pathways, irregular means, while regular pathways are there. But obviously, it comes out from the discussion that regular pathways are limited, or they cannot avail it because of other structural kind of structural matters or structural backgrounds. I'll come back to that discussion, but before I go there, methodology. In terms of methodology, I would say it is a very extensive research. It's not easy to get in touch with 100 returnees, because of the clandestine nature of the migration. But the research team has done so. So it is very extensive, but I would suggest that it would be more comprehensive if you can get the views from the successful cases, which means you have to have, the people who have already reached the other side of the sea and now living happily. Because if you really want to know the dreams, you have to see how the dream has come true. In terms of analytical framework, I'd say that life chances is a kind of a broader canvas, which you can use for various research. It's a very good start, but then you have to deal with the the nitty-gritties of the life chances. For example, as we know that Max Weber has talked about, the unexpected challenges, negative consequences, but he also mentioned that there are structural factors as well as individual agency, which are responsible for any kind of life chances and their pursuance. So in terms of irregular migration, since you have already mentioned that this exists, I would request you to go deeper into this and analyze, what are the agency, what are the factors, what are the elements of individual agency, and also what are the elements of a structural factor that combinedly create condition for taking migration, irregular migration as a life strategy and life chances. So that complex interaction is not actually unveiled or explored adequately in the research. In the content where you are presenting the data, I had the chance to read the paper, the draft, and then I realized that you have a very, very thick kind of data. You talked about, the drivers. You talked about the dreams. You just compared it with some African or other context, European context, where this kind of migration is happening. But then also you brought some issues of the role of social media. But the point is, in discussion and analysis, I hardly found, how they are actually linked. All these things are linked, especially when you were talking about social media, the role of social media. You mentioned that around 58% of the returning migrants claim that social media had a very direct and indirect impact on their decision making. But it would itself can be a study on how the social media is playing a role in this kind of irregular migration. And again, when you were talking about, the structural factors, sociocultural factors, you have to remember that when you are comparing it with African or European cases, there are similarities, dissimilarities. The social cultural traits are different, and the thought process is different. So the way an African migrant take decision is different from the way, or the factors influencing their decision are different from African and Asian context. So a direct, it would be interesting to see the different cases and compare them, but it would be, I think it would be wrong to come to a conclusion from their findings and their analysis. We should have our own analysis of why these people are migrating and how these people are migrating. So having said that, at the end, you made the argument that, the significant sacrifices are there, social and financial risk are there, exploitations and abuse are there. And you argue that the experiences can jeopardize one's chances of leading a better life. But you have to develop these arguments in a very concrete way by showing the evidence, as well as putting these evidences into the analysis of life chances. And from the policy perspective, these are all from my research perspective, research angle. I'm telling all these things, but from policy perspective, I think we should focus some other issues. For example, criminalization of migration. That is very much here in irregular migration concept. Victimization of migration. When you are talking about drivers, obviously you have to see how they're criminalized, how the narratives are victimizing these people. They might not be that vulnerable as we want to see them. So there are politics involved, there are policies involved. And also and the compulsion to go further even when they see the bleak chances of success. So the involvement of transnational organized groups and so it's a different level of analysis that we have to think about, and also the ideas, interest, and institution behind the knowledge of irregular migration. And also I mentioned about social media, and we also have to think about norms, the insurances, the lack of opportunities. So all the structural factors as well as individual agency, somewhere we missed that thing. It has to be there, and then you can actually make the best use of your findings and come up with a very good policy paper as well as very good research paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rojana Rashid, for sharing your comments on the keynote paper that Dr. Jalal, Dr. Reja presented. I would like to welcome our former Dean and current Treasurer of North-South University, Professor Abdul Rauf, making a time and joining with us today, and also our Vice Chancellor, Professor Atikul Islam, sir. We know that you had a long journey back last night, and thank you for making a time to join with us this morning with us. Thank you. Now we have another esteemed discussant with us today. Our second discussant is Professor Shahidul Haq, who currently occupies the ICCR Bangabandhu Chair at the University of Delhi, India. He's also the advisor of Center for Migration Studies and a member for Center for Peace Studies of North-South University. He's a senior advisor on migration and humanitarian policy of IOM Dhaka. Professor Haq served as the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh from January 2013 to December 2019 and led the Bangladesh delegation to the negotiation with Myanmar associated with the Rohingya issue. Mr. Haq pursued his graduate studies in international relations and diplomacy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, USA. He also co-authored a book titled Migration, Myth and Policy and Practices, published by Spinger back in 2020. Please join me in welcoming our second discussant, Professor Shahidul Haq.
Thank you, Professor Wahab, distinguished participants. I was just wondering as to where I start, because Dr. Rojana Rashid has looked at the research quite importantly and deliberately. First of all, let me congratulate Salim Reza, Professor, and the whole team for putting this study. And I'll come back as to why it drew my attention so much. Because we did a similar exercise in Bangladesh. It was of a different nature in 2003 and 4, led by the UN system, but there was also others. And it was an 18 months long study as to why Bangladeshis want to migrate. And we started off on the premise that we look at only human trafficking and smuggling, which is basically irregular migration. And then we ended up also including migration. So I'll share a bit of it. But the word gambling is extremely provocating. And it is indeed gambling. I have served in Middle East and in Africa for UN, not as Foreign Secretary. And I have seen how people really gamble their life and everything for just be on the shore of Europe. I have been to to Italy and Greece, where most of migrants end up. Since Dr. Rojana Rashid has looked at very technically on the whole study, I will try and look at the policy from the other end, because it is something which happens only when we have a supply and a demand. And there's also a price, very sorry to say that. And it evolves, it functions within the broader neoclassical economy. And that's why you see the Russia, China, there's not much debate on on migration, but more debate in Europe, America, and other places where economy is run on the hypothesis of neoclassical economy. So that's where it is. So we have to, the study only talks about the supply side, however, the demand side. So that's something important. I know that's not the focus. Maybe there was a subsequent study to done as to why people try and go ahead, irrespective of not the individual, but the process, because there is a process which also works in the migratory process. So what's happening in the world in terms of migration? Migration has become a very emotive, very controversial, very sensitive, and very securitized phenomena. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we see that there's multiple narrative emerging from the destination countries suggesting that the whole idea of migration is dead, extremely bad, should not be pursued in a very kind of a broad policy perspective. And for the first time, we see that there's a dichotomy emerging in Europe, where the politicians, the policymakers are saying migration is bad, we shouldn't be pursuing it, we shouldn't bring in people, especially those who doesn't look like us, pray like us, and behave like us. As simple as that. First time, it wasn't there even on the toughest time of migration. Now, on the other hand, the market, the European market, is kind of aging to get more migrants because their economy is growing, their people are aging and declining, and they don't have people to do things which normally done by the migrant community. And earlier, Europe used to have a lot of refugees who actually failed in these places. And now that Europe is also not taking refugees, so who is going to do it? So there's a dichotomy in the economy, which is actually hurting both the European economy and the migrants, because that's why Dr. Rosanna, she said there's not enough pathways, regular pathways, and that's why we are talking about this gambling. Had there been enough pathways, possibly we wouldn't have. And there are countries from where there are good pathways, and we see less and less of illegal migrants, including in India. So that's one debate. The other debate is globally, we had an understanding, the world of, because I'm in the world of migration for 30 years. So we had an understanding the migration is good, it contributes to the development, and at the end, in 2015, 16, and 17, UN accepted all member states that this is something good, and it should be discussed in the multilateral forum, and it should be pursued by individual states. Now, we see that some of the destination countries, in particular Europe and America, is moving away from that understanding. They are trying to create a new policy debate, which seems to be not working because it is not based on realistic study and evidences on both sides, on both the origin and destination countries. So that's where there is a call that coming out of even the European institution. There's new thinking needed in the world of migration in post-COVID and post-conflict time. Now, in this new thinking, these kinds of a study would add a lot of value, because they will also try to see why people are so desperate to come to Europe. They have to understand it first, and then only they can have a policy either to promote it or to stop it, whichever way one want to look at. So that's one. The other issue is the whole issue of demography. Right? And I don't want to sort of elaborate on that, and I know there's a time constraint, I'll cut short quickly. South Asia as such, and the Sub-Saharan Africa, these are the two areas which will produce labor, human skill, for the next 3 decades, 4 decades, or 5 decades. So it is Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And in South Asia, you know, India is the country which having largest population, which has bypassed China in April. So here you're talking about a people which is growing and needs job and work, and certainly will look abroad for that. So these are some of the intricate issues related to migration. The second area that I'll have another two areas, but second area is the whole idea of decoupling migration and migrants with the rest of phenomena, including inequality, including market demand, including geopolitics, is absolutely a futile effort. You cannot de-link and look at migration as something that state needs to look at. So that's what. And we should not have the illusion the state is the most rational actor in the process. In most of the cases, it isn't. It is the people who are more rational. If you ask migrants, which I have done in various parts of the world, they have a very strong logical reasons to move, even taking a high risk. So that's where we need to focus on. I'll end with the last few. We see that there is a trilateral dilemma in policy making and debating migration. First, is politicians made it very controversial, and they want to stop migration and mobility, especially for those who doesn't look, pray, and behave like them. In every country, I'm not blaming any particular country, even in my own country. That's why we have so much of difficulties with this, because they don't pray, they pray like us, but they don't behave like us. They're not us. The whole us and them identity issue. So that's one. On the other hand, market is kind of wants more people to come and join them at a lower wage. Where from they'll get it? They're not getting it. So they're desperate. So that's why all the illegal migrants that end up in Europe, I'm using the word illegal, they all get provided for some or other. At least 80% get provided. That's my experience. Whether it's Italy and Greece or France, even in UK. So where they're ending up, they must be eating, at least two times a day, if not 3 times a day. So that means they have an opportunity to lead their life in the market. It's not in the government houses. So the third dilemma, which is the dilemma of ensuring fundamental rights of all people, including migrants. Now, Europe is duty bound because they have created this regime to ensure that everybody on their land gets a huge opportunity to create their life and also gets their rights ensured. Now, what they deal with the migrants who are not essentially their own people, citizens. So that's the third dilemma. And in these 3 dilemmas that we are talking about, the whole issue of migrants are lost. They fell through the crack. We don't see migrants. We only see state and the migration. We don't see migrants. That's where the problem is. And this study looks at where is the migrants, why they want to go. Let's bring the migrant back to the center of the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Shadul sir, for your wonderful comments on this paper presented by Dr. Selim this morning. Now, I think I'd like to open the floor for the question and answer session, as I mentioned. So we'll be taking questions from online and offline as well. So this process will continue from offline first. So at the beginning, maybe we'll take 2 questions from the audience. If you wanted to raise question, please put your hands up so that we can recognize you. We found one from here and then another one from that side. So we'll take these 2 questions first, and then we'll go for the second round. Yes, please introduce yourself and then directly ask to the question very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Professor Awal. I'm serving as a professor of law at the Independent University of Bangladesh. So I'd like to congratulate Professor Selim Reza for this interesting research. Actually, there are so many untold stories regarding this, both illegal and legal migrations. So just my inquiry is whether you get opportunity to, through your interview questions, that what is the consequence of these illegal migrants when they reach to their desired destination, European countries? What kind of challenges they face to get kind of humanitarian assistance and something. And you mentioned that usually if they are caught by the law enforcing agencies, usually they are taken to a detention center. And what are the actually scenario they face in that particular situations? And if they're forced to return to their home country, is there any that they face more severe crisis in the both social and mentally? So did you get any opportunity to look into this matter? And is there any both side from Europe and Bangladesh that what kind of support they can provide if they grant them in future as or legalize them in future? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. I think I'll come back to Dr. Selim later after taking the second question. Please introduce yourself and then you directly ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Mahdi Hasan. I'm the head of Human Trafficking and Smuggling of Migrants portfolio of UNODC in Bangladesh. So in the findings, the painful part I observed, which is the unfortunate death of migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. So I wanted to understand if you have any policy recommendations or guidance how this death can be stopped and what policy measures we need to think about. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Selim, would you like to take this podium and then respond to the question? Thank you. Very briefly, please.
Okay, thank you for the interesting questions. The question number one, I would like to say, yes, we have been able to interact with many migrant workers. And as you have seen, the sources of participants on 5 districts in Bangladesh, and almost 55 have returned from Europe after becoming successful in entering in Europe. So some were in detention and some are having some kind of work experience for 1 or 2 years or even 3 years or 4 years. And they were just hiding in there, and they had to have a very different kind of policy to keep themselves away from the pursuit of police officers and the law enforcing agencies. So we have found different kinds of workers who have worked as daily laborers. Some have worked there as car washers. Some have worked there as delivery men. Some had worked there as cleaners on a daily basis. So there are definitely some cases where people have been successful to enter in Europe through irregular routes. And whenever they come back, there are different kinds of groups, actually. Some try to portray their overall experience as a success, as a very, very wonderful success. And they tell their neighbors, their friends, and others that, yeah, it's a game, and I have been a winner of this game, and I have been successful in entering in Europe in irregular ways. And so you guys can try. And if you can really be successful, and that will really create an important impact on your social and economic conditions. And the second part of your question about the social acceptance. So yeah, social acceptance is there. And even if somebody is not successful in entering in Europe through irregular routes and detained in Europe, whenever he is coming back, he is telling the whole story in a very idealized way. That yes, I have been able to see Europe, even if I have not been able to enter in Europe. So that's definitely part of gambling, as Professor Shahidul Haq was mentioning, that is why we carefully selected the term gambling for the title of the paper. And gambling involves lots and lots of misinformation, as you can see. So in terms of social acceptance, in terms of social consequences and economic consequences, there are both stories. Some have become very, very vulnerable because of abusive working conditions, because of language barrier, and because of lack of information on social and other services. And many have become successful, and many have come and spread the success stories among the people. On question number 2, what are the policy recommendations? So it's a very purely academic research, and academic research involves academic exploration of different kinds of interrelations that irregular migration is sharing. And in that sense, I would say one of the key policy recommendations that we have worked on is to ensure that the young people are not misguided. The young people are not getting any kind of misleading information through social media and other platforms. And I think the government, the policymakers, and the researchers, the academicians, we all will need to work together if we really want to protect these young people from that severe desperation for exploring Europe or getting confused about the success or about the return of education. So in that sense, I would say the policymakers will need to take urgent action to address the causes of frustration of the young people. And at the same time, they will need to prevent the sources that are spreading misleading information, which in turn cause frustration among the young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Selim Reza, for your response on this question. You all will be waiting to read your final paper. So I would like to open the second phase of question. I found one question from this side, like one hands, and there was one hands from this side. I really want one hands from the female participant. Anyone from female? We got one there. So this time, I guess we'll have 3 questions at the same time, not 2. So please introduce yourself and then.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor to make a question. This is Kutubuddin Ahmed, General Secretary, Industrial Bangladesh Council, IBC. I would like to make a question. What role has been playing by your respective embassies located in Europe and North America to protect the rights of the migrant workers? And it has been observed that amid of the middle income country, Bangladesh is going to get graduation certificate by 2026. But in amid of this, workers, migrant workers have been dying by sinking boat. They are trying to go to Malaysia or Europe, but they cannot reach there. They have to face those ill-fated people. What measure to be taken to protect and to protect the rights of the migrant workers? This is my question.
Thank you. The second question from there. Please introduce yourself and ask to our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sarwat bint Islam. I'm development worker. My question is that in the study, do you have any direction that how Bangladesh and European countries, European Union can open a regular way for the migration process? You know that Bangladesh every year, a huge number of Bangladeshi migrants are going in regular way, mostly the Gulf countries, Malaysia and other countries. But for Europe, you from the study and when we are working with the migrant workers, we have seen that our young generation have a big dream to go Europe, but they have no way, no legal way. That's why they are choosing the irregular ways. So, and our secretary sir is here. So we are how Bangladesh government can open the a regular way for the young generation. Thank you. Do you have any guideline or pathways? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. There is another question from at the back. So please, very specific question to our speaker. Thank you.
Okay, good day to everyone. I'm Sabiha Salek from the Department of English and Modern Languages. I was just wondering, this is not related to international migration. It was about from rural to urban internally. Does that have any impact on international migrants? Because it is affected by existing social institutions and the demand and supply route that was being spoken about. So does the internal migration from rural to urban areas within Bangladesh have an impact on the international routes? Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take with our keynote speaker. Is that all right if we take one more question? Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. There is one question will be coming from here, please, Professor, our own Professor Mahbub sir.
Thank you. I find vulnerability, whether it is a regular migrant or irregular migrant. The irregular migration is taking place, and our Honorable Secretary of Minister of Expatriates is here. I was part of the process of creating awareness, consciousness. We think that the people know, they are aware of the vulnerabilities. Actually, they are not. So the more consciousness, awareness is created, the better for the community. Before even they jump into this, what you call gambling. And second point is, what role actually the Bangladeshi diasporas can play who are actually living outside there. We call them successful migrants. And they do have some responsibilities towards the people who are coming. So I don't know if our Honorable Secretary can address into this. Bangladeshi diaspora policy, so far I know has been announced, but what role it is actually going to play and how the diaspora, Bangladeshi diaspora can play into this. Thank you very much.
I request Dr. Selim Reza to respond to these questions very briefly because we have lunch after this program, so you can have a lot of discussion on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think on the first question, what role the embassies have played so far, I think the chief guest, Honorable Senior Secretary, would be the best person to answer to this question. But for our study, we have found that Bangladesh embassies have taken lots and lots of positive measures to stop irregular migration and to ensure safe migration. But there are lots of questions regarding the quality of the services and regarding the outreach of the services, and definitely regarding the information scale related to those services. I think I will humbly leave that question to the Honorable Secretary, sir. For the second question, what Bangladesh and Europe can do to open a regular way. Based on the interviews that I have conducted, I was realizing the best way would be to ensure a G2G process, government to government migration process, as we have seen in case of Malaysia, in case of Korea, and in case of Japan. And another problem is in the field level, people are quite skeptical to think that there are some options to migrate to Europe legally. They do not want to accept it. They think that there are no legal ways to enter into Europe and there are no available options that they can try. So the one and only option that they should try is to enter into Europe illegally or through irregular means. And I think Bangladesh and European Union policymakers can really work on developing a suitable mechanism that can really ensure a government-to-government process which can really attract the genuinely aspirant migrants for European market. The third question, how internal migration leads to international migration. That's a very interesting question, and I think that is where my specialization is as well. I'm writing my second book on that how internal migration creates international migration. We have found in this study that there are many people who have migrated from Shariatpur, a rural district, and they have migrated from Shariatpur to Dhaka. And only after their migration to Dhaka, they have found information about international migration. But whenever they were in Shariatpur, they had no idea, even they did not have any kind of courage to think about leaving the country. But once they have been in Dhaka, they have got multiple types of information to think about international migration. They have been able to contact different kinds of available connections, which have really led to their aspiration for international migration. So definitely internal migration speeds up and connects the migrants to different kinds of information sources for international migration. And there are many other factors as well. And role of diasporas in our study, as I have already mentioned in my speech, the role of diasporas has been quite negative in terms of promoting irregular migration. As we have seen that in many cases, the participants have mentioned that they have got the information about irregular migration from the diasporas. And they have been connected to those diasporas who have always said that, okay, if you can come, then come. Or if you want to try, then try. It's not a very big thing. And if you can become successful, then a bright future is waiting for you in Europe. So try in your own way and let me know if you need any kind of help. So I think that is where Bangladesh government and the European policymakers can really work on that. What could be the guidelines for the operation of the diasporas and what could be done and what could not be done to ensure safe migration and regular migration more and more from Bangladesh to Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Selim, for your response. In order to adhere to our schedule and respect the time of our honorable guests, we are not taking any further questions. This will allow us to maintain the flow of the event and ensure that we cover all planned sessions. Dear audience, now we'll have a book launching session. The title of the book is The Displaced Rohingyas, A Tale of a Vulnerable Community, edited by Professor S.K. Tawfiq M. Haq, Dr. Bulbul Siddiqui, and Dr. Isha Jakia Sultana. They have their own chapters in the book as well. So before we unwrapping the book, I think among the editors, we have physically present here, Professor S.K. Tawfiq M. Haq. I would like to request him to share the journey of the books and something from his chapter as well. Professor Tawfiq.
Thank you, Dr. Wahab. Assalamu alaikum. Good day to everyone. It's a great pleasure that on the day of the celebration of International Day of Migration and also 1 year celebration of Center for Migration Studies, we can launch this book, The Displaced Rohingya, A Tale of Vulnerable Community, from Routledge. I'm Professor Tawfiq. I'm the Director of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance and Chair of the Department of Political Science and Sociology. We have some of our authors present in this room, and some are probably online. They have joined, and also the other editors, my two other co-editors probably joined online. I will just give a very brief overview of the chapters that we have in this book. And it has so relevance on the day of migration because we are talking about the forced migration by the Rohingya population. Just to give a background that SIPG organized an international conference in 2019, and this book is output of that conference. Some of the selected papers presented in that conference have been published as a book chapter here. And also on the basis of that conference, the Center for Peace Studies was established in 2020, another center for South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance. And I would like to share this information that Center for Peace Studies and Center for Migration Studies of SIPG, we have faculty members who have been doing research on migration and especially on this forced migration, especially the Rohingya issue. And we very modestly claim that CPS probably is the only center in Bangladesh academically producing high quality research papers as well as policy documents for the government of Bangladesh on the Rohingya crisis. The book offers a comprehensive overview of the refugee crisis. It analyzes the socio-cultural and humanitarian challenges of the crisis, along with the discourses that have developed on this issue via the local and international media and literature. The volume also suggests ways to build sustainable solutions for the Rohingya refugees. We divided the book into 5 themes. The first theme was forced displacement and statelessness. And under this theme, we had at least 4 chapters. The second theme was humanitarianism, issues and uncertainties. Under this theme, we had 2 chapters. The third theme was women, children and vulnerability. That covered 2 more chapters. And then number 4 is Rohingya voice, media representation. And it also had 3 chapters, and final theme was policy and sustainable solution, which had 2 chapters. And in that way, you know that after the crisis happened in 2017, there were lots of research being done and publications lots of books have been published and the research articles have been published. But this is a comprehensive volume that covered different aspects, not only the history, culture, their vulnerability from in terms of their livelihood, but also the policy perspective, media perspective, and others. I will just give a very quick summary of the chapters. In the first chapter, in the introduction, we mostly summarized the discussion. And in the second chapter by Ishrat Zakia Sultana and Avanti Harun. By the way, we also like to share that we had authors from 8 countries who contributed in this volume. And many of the authors were also from North-South universities, but we had authors also from different countries of the world. As I was saying, that the second chapter by Ishrat and Avanti Harun begins with a historical overview. This was a historical chapter. And basically, it talked about complexity of the Rohingya crisis, and which is rooted in history and which is unchangeable. And yet it is very useful to gain knowledge about in order to contribute the solution of the crisis. In the third chapter, Muhammad Ishrat Ibn Ismail and Muhammad Mizanur Rahman referred to the atrocities of the Rohingya as an act of state-sponsored genocide. So this was a chapter more specialized on the genocide. And the authors argue that religious tolerance basically is important for coexistence of marginalized Muslim and the dominant Buddhist in Myanmar. They also emphasized the need to develop trust between the two communities and pointed out the government that the government should be non-communal in the treatment of its citizens and not prioritize one religion over other. The fourth chapter was written by me and also Dr. Mahabubul Haq, and it discussed the struggle of Rohingya in 2 Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia and Thailand. So it was beyond Bangladesh. In this chapter, we tried to see that how the Rohingyas are treated in these countries as undocumented asylum seekers, illegal migrant workers, and also as stateless individuals. Malaysia and Thailand are not the signatories to the 1951 Convention and 67 Protocol relating to the status of refugees. And that's why the Rohingyas living in these 2 countries failed to get assistance from national and international agencies. Despite this fact, the Malaysia has become the most popular destination for the Rohingya among the Southeast Asian countries. And you are seeing the news is that there are boat people, even from Cox's Bazar and the camp area, that they are trying to reach Malaysia. The Rohingya in these countries lack dignified protection and legal rights and live with limited access to healthcare and education. Next chapter, the chapter 5 was written by Bulbul Siddiqui and Palash Kamruzaman and Ehsan Kobir, and it discusses the vulnerabilities of the Rohingya in Bangladesh. And basically they talked about the consequence of the delay of repatriation and how it creates the serious concerns about health, education, human trafficking, gender-based violence, and overall well-being of the people living in the camp. In the chapter 6, Ishrat Zakia Sultana investigates the stratified lives of the Rohingya and the relationship between the registered and unregistered Rohingya in Bangladesh. And this is an ethnographic study, very long, and she tried to show the differences that the registered refugees who are living in the camps for a very long period of the time and what are their condition in comparison with the FDMN, that is the forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals who came after 2017 mostly. Mahmoud Rahman, one of my co-editors, he wrote the chapter 7 and explores the nature of social insecurity among Rohingya adults and girls. And Mr. Mahmoud, Dr. Mahmoud's chapter shows the inadequate functioning of the major agencies of socialization, such as schools, religious and community institutions. And due to the urgency to respond to the demands of survival, adults and youth, boys and girls living in the camps are at risk of being involved in conflicts, violence, and different forms of deviant behavior like drug trafficking, and other kind of the criminal activities. In chapter 8, Lucy Christine Deru illustrates the healthcare behavior for reproductive tract infections among adolescent Rohingya girls. And she also discusses the general health perspective of adolescent girls in the camps. Chapter 9 was written by AKM Rahman Bhuiya. He is the chair of our NSU English department. And this is a very unique chapter because for the first time that the research, some research has given overview about the importance of oral accounts to reconstruct a sense of selfhood, develop representation, provide agency to the Rohingya refugees, and advance markers of resistance against the injustice perpetrated upon the victims. And the Bhuiya argues that Rohingya oral narratives are powerful tools and that can be used to portray this vulnerability to the international community. Chapter 10 by Dr. Harisur Rahman, he is also in this room, our faculty at the Department of Political Science and Sociology. And this is also an interesting chapter because it talked about the Rohingya crisis from two online leading newspapers, the People's Daily and the Global Times, and two Indian newspaper, Times of India and the Hindu. And the Rahman and Dr. Rahman observed that due to the mutual and beneficial interest of China and India in Myanmar, analysis from the news published shows a pattern of leniency towards Myanmar. Moreover, Rahman indicates that China and India also oppose various multilateral initiatives of the West to resolve the Rohingya crisis. The role of the West is critically seen to be detrimental to Myanmar's peace and stability by the Chinese newspapers. So this is a fascinating chapter and probably unique in many ways. Chapter 11 also is related with media that Palash Kamruzaman, Ehsan Kabir, and Bulbul Siddiqui bring out the representation of Rohingya in two leading Bangladeshi newspapers, Daily Star and Prothom Alo. And the analysis show a discrepancy in the total number of Rohingya who entered Bangladesh in 2017, which might be a problem for the wider community in repatriating in Rohingya in Myanmar in future. They also show that as repatriation is seen as the highest priority, many short-term needs have to be treated with urgency. Chapter 12 by Shivani Dotto, this is under the section of policy. She provides an overview of Rohingya crisis in Bangladesh, focusing on policy, law, and practice. Shivani observes that Rohingya, in fear of returning to the same horrific conditions they fled, may not wish to go back to their country. And she suggested that Bangladesh should think about ensuring refugee rights through the municipal law in Bangladesh and issuing them work permits by which they would also contribute to the local economy. And also she suggested pursuing the bilateral agreement with Myanmar for the repatriation. The final chapter was on the policy perspective, and Professor Shoidul Haq and another ambassador, Shafiur Rahman, provided a detailed analysis of the Rohingya policy articulations of Bangladesh to show the rationale in the context of larger domestic opinion and foreign relation imperatives. They argue that adopting a multilateral channel would help Bangladesh to create pressure on Myanmar to address the root causes of the crisis and facilitate a sustainable return of the Rohingya. So this is also a fascinating chapter because this chapter was written by someone who were directly involved with the policy making process. So these are the 13 chapters. And in the conclusion, we also say that this problem of the forced migration has become more complex over time and generated new problems of different nature like geopolitical, diplomatic, socioeconomic, developmental, cultural, and political. So thus measures should be taken to deal with the present problems at the camp level also, but also we need to think about how multilateral, hybrid, and proactive diplomatic efforts have to be adopted for the dignified and voluntary repatriation of the Rohingya population. So we are very happy that on this day, we are going to launch this book, and I hope that it will be a good contribution in the future research and also in the classroom teaching and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tawfiq, sir, for sharing your ideas and also going through in details of the book. I hope a lot of you will be interested to read this book. So please contact with us. How are we going to get this book? Thank you. Now, I think we have very briefly comments on these books. We have with us Professor Abdul Rab Khan, former Dean, School of Humanities and Social Science of North-South University and Treasurer of North-South University to share his views very briefly because as we are running a bit late, so we request you to share very briefly. Thank you.
Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum, every participant in this hall. This is a very remarkable seminar that you are going to organize. You have already gone through the whole process because it talks about a very renowned problem, the very pathetic problem that we're going through now. Because although there are incidents of boat drowning, people dying in the sea, but still that problem process goes on. I mean, is it that they don't recognize the risk they are taking, physical risks, survival risks, all the, but they are going. So this is a phenomenon that the book that under discussion has been a scholarly book that covers irregular migration, taking people who take the risk of their life. So it takes a lot of dimensions like gender dimension, which is very important, particularly the adolescent women, their problem. And then also it talks about the question of young people. That is very interesting dimension you have brought in because unless you give voice to these people, young people, I mean, and then also counseling them that their path they are taking is very risky path. I think they will not stop doing that. So I think this book in fact contributes to also the understanding the dynamics of irregular migration, forced migration, as well as it also to the different dimension that policymakers should address, particularly when counseling the young people, not to get lured by ideas which are alien to them, which are dangerous path. So these are important issues that have come out from this book. I admire the initiative of the authors, as well as if there are as many as 13 papers have been put together in this kind of discussion. So I really congratulate the authors as well as SIPG, South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, because it has contributed this. And I think on this very day, when the Center for Migration Studies was founded, I think this also augurs well that the similar kind of pollution as well as discussion will come up in future. So I congratulate CMS, I congratulate SIPG, and also North-South University in this process. Okay, I think this volume, I think it needs to be also widely circulated, particularly this kind of discussion, bringing Rohingyas in perspective, because we are almost considering the Rohingya community as a kind of forgotten community. Also the kind of traumas they are going through, and also in the camp life. So all these, in fact, needs to be highlighted and also circulated well. For this, I think I will value that this value will add insights, not only to the academician, but also policymakers who might think how we can address the grievances and also policy papers of this community. So with this, in fact, I was also supposed to propose a vote of thanks, but I can suspend for some time being. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir. We'll come back to vote of thanks, sir. Very briefly. Thank you, sir, for sharing your insights from this book. Now, I would like to request our volunteer to hand over the books to our honorable guest. And also, if we have authors of a particular chapter of this book are present here, please come forward for a photograph. Thank you.
Aris. Dr. Rahman.
Thank you, everybody, for taking part of this session. Dear audience, we're about to start our third phase of our program. In this session, we'll be listening to expert opinions and guidelines from our esteemed guests. First, we'll be hearing from our guest of honor. As I mentioned before, our guest of honor supposed to be His Excellency Charles Whitney. He's unwell. That's why we have our guest of honor today is Dr. Bernd Spanier, Deputy Head of Mission, the delegation, the European Union in Bangladesh. Let me share very briefly about him. He joined the European Union delegation to Bangladesh on September 2022 as a deputy head of mission or head of political trade, press, and information section. Prior to this posting in Dhaka, he worked in the newly created strategic communication division of the European External Action Services. And as the European External Action Services, a parliamentary affairs correspondent responsible for the Strasbourg plenary sessions and the European Parliament's Human Rights and LIBE Committee. Please welcome to our session, and especially I would like to request Dr. Bernard Spencer to come to the podium to say a few words to us. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you very much indeed. It's an extreme pleasure to be here for many reasons. What you didn't mention is that, I have a background also in academia. So I was a university teacher in my former life. So whenever I have the possibility to come to your university and speak, this feels a bit like coming home. And let me say that it's rarely that I come to an event where we have a discussion like this, which is really based on an interesting study and a fundamentally informative and change. So I took many notes from the presentations that were. I had prepared a speech, but now I I decided to discard my speech and rather comment on what was said before. So, fascinating study by Dr. Selim Reza, and the one thing that struck me, one of the responses to the migrants to Europe said, Europe, even if you're an irregular migrant, the humanitarian policy is so good that everybody's welcome and things are very, very nice. Now, I have to say, the climate, and this is reality, the climate in Europe is changing when it comes to irregular migration. People are becoming more skeptical. And I have to say, Professor Shahidul Haq, you put it perfectly well in your intervention. There's a big dichotomy in Europe. Now, you've seen, if you look at the press, there's now big skepticism or growing skepticism about specifically irregular migration. You see governments being elected that are less friendly to migration than the ones before. And this is a trend and a tendency, and this is a reality. So the situation of migrants in Europe, illegal migrants, is becoming harsher, and that's a reality. On the other hand, Professor Haq, you said it, it's a demand and supply. There is now in Europe a dramatic need, and I say dramatic, the word, I choose my words carefully, in terms of workforce we need, and we need them in many sectors. We have a very much overaged population in Europe. There will be a dramatic need, I repeat, in the care sector of people caring for older people, but also, on the other hand, we have a dramatic shortage of skilled laborers in the industry. Country I know best, I'm from Germany, my mother's from English, but if we look at the famed German car industry, they're lacking engineers, they're lacking skilled workers. I mean, building a car nowadays is not just tightening some screws as it was like some decades ago. Building a car nowadays, you need to be very well skilled in electronics, in mechatronic, in other things. and we don't have the people. So my personal assessment is at the moment where we are in between, where people have not yet realized fully how much we need migration. And I think people will realize once they go to a hospital and they can't get treated because there's a lack of doctors, they can't have the care because there's a lack of nurses, or they will have to wait 1 year before their new car arrives because there's a lack of workers on the assembly line. I think we're not there yet, but we will be there very soon. And this is, again, as you said, it requires some new thinking in Europe. At the moment, again, there's a lot of skepticism about migration, about illegal migration in particular, but it's clearly that in the near future, there's a big need. And I think the two positions, they can only be, the key skill here is, the key word here is skills. What we need is skilled people, and these skilled people will be more than accepted. And it's, I think that the challenge is to train people to provide these essential skills. Now, what we're trying to do, and it was mentioned before with the European Union, there are a lot of bilateral agreements at the moment between European countries and Bangladesh. For instance, Italy and Bangladesh have a bilateral agreement. I think Greece and Bangladesh try to have a bilateral agreement. Germany might have a bilateral agreement. What we try to do is have a European agreement with Bangladesh, and we call it the Talent Partnership. Talent Partnership means that we want to tackle this comprehensively. We want to have a system where we systematically train people in Bangladesh so that they're made fit for the demands in the various European countries. This is something the European Commissioner for Migration initiated when she was here just last year. So it's at the very beginning stage, but this, I think, is something we're looking at very promising in the future. So this talent partnership, what it does is creating legal pathways, I would say, legal pathways for people to go to Europe. What I also noticed is a lot of the challenges I think we face in communication. People who are risking their lives to go to Europe, and maybe they got a wrong impression from the Bangladeshi community who made it in Europe, that it's worth going under any circumstance. But I think we need also communication of things that go wrong. And one thing we do as European Union, we support the reintegration of people who are returned from Europe. So these are people who didn't make it in Europe, who were maybe smuggled and trafficked to Europe under false promises, and they were returned. And what we try to do is give these people, reintegrate them into the Bangladeshi labor market and society. And we do this by a program called Protasha, which we're doing with the IOM. It was in fact so successful that we have the second program of Protasha. And what we also think is that these people, they should communicate to all of the Bangladeshis who make this unsafe journey or who are in danger of being trafficked, to tell the real story of what it's like to live in the underground, not having legal status, and also explain this side of the story, because I think communication is a big part of this. What I want to say about what this institute is doing is very important. I think having an academic grip on the whole migration debate in Bangladesh is something very, very important. And I'm very glad that this university is doing this with its faculty, because what we need is data that, like in your studies. And another example I have from the European Union, we have this GLOW-ACT project. This is a project that looks at preventing trafficking in persons and smuggling in migrants. And this program is collecting data on migration flows. Because we, for instance, we see a route just last year, 2 years, where the numbers go up, and this is a route that goes via Libya to Europe, and we want to know why exactly. And we can only tackle this problem if we have reliable data and collect this. And so the work you are doing here, and I think it should be done much more in Bangladesh, but congratulations on having this academic line at your university. And then, of course, let me mention the Rohingya community. I mean, they're not technically migrants; they're internally displaced people, but there's 1 million of them. And again, here, I think the keyword is skills. I mean, if they are, once the conditions are ready for them to return, they should be skilled. They should have some basic education in order to then also have a meaningful occupation back in their home country in Myanmar. So what we're doing as EU, we're trying to, as good as we can, provide some skills development also in the Rohingya camps. Because again and again, I cannot underline it more, the most important thing to prepare people is enhancing their skills. Whether it's Bangladeshis going to Europe, whether it's Rohingya people going back to the place of origin, skills is at the core of our strategy. So in conclusion, let me thank you again for inviting me. I'm always happy that Ambassador Whiteley fell ill this morning, because it gave me the opportunity to listen and takes a lot of interesting notes. So speaking for the EU, I reaffirm our commitment to work on sustainable solutions in this matter, grounded in cooperation, compassion, and the respect for human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bernd Spanier, for your wonderful speech. And I think you rightly mentioned the next person will be academic as well. So the day CMS started its journey 1 year before, and the person who made the journey more colorful and equally successful, none other than the chief guest of today's session, Dr. Ahmed Monir Salehin, Senior Secretary, Ministry of Expatriates, Welfare and Overseas Employment, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Dr. Salehin started his professional career, I would like to remind all of you, as a lecturer in English in Jahangirnagar University, Dhaka, Bangladesh in 1989. Then he switched to Bangladesh Civil Service in 1991, and worked as a member of Bangladesh Civil Service, Customs and Excise till 2009. When he entered senior administrative pool and working there till today. Dr. Salehin completed his PhD. Before that, he completed his master's from America as well, from the Department of Political Science and Public Policy of the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the Flinders University, Adelaide, South Australia. Please join me in extending, I think our Vice Chancellor also worked there in South Australia, particularly University of South Australia. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Salehin.
Honorable Chair of the session, Professor Atikul Islam, Vice Chancellor, North-South University. Respected guest of honor, Dr. Bernd Spanier, Deputy Head of Delegation, European Union. The keynote paper presenter, distinguished guests from different sectors, including those from the university who are the faculty members, distinguished members of the audience. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. So this is the month of December, the month of our glorious victory in the War of Liberation in 1971. So let me take this opportunity to pay my deepest homage to the great leader, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and the martyrs whose priceless sacrifice for the long cherished independence of Bangladesh. So I would like to follow the suit of Dr. Bernd Spanier, the way he said that it's like homecoming. In fact, as you have already heard, that I started my career as a teacher. So whenever there is an opportunity of coming back to this kind of academia, it is really a very comfortable zone. and I always take a very keen and active interest in interacting with academia regarding the policy issues which otherwise have remained left with the administrators. And my interest is resting on more than one reason. It is always reassuring to see that a very significant socio-economic phenomenon like migration is no more left with a handful of administrators, international development partners, and migration activists. It is now being cultured and cultivated by academia. This is reassuring because I always like to say that migration, though it is contributing hugely to the socio-economic development of this country, is yet to be mainstreamed. So to begin with, I would like to congratulate the presenter, keynote speaker, Dr. Selim Reza, for a very comprehensive presentation. Okay, maybe there are some loopholes, some of the things which could be given more attention has not been given, all these things. But he has been able to identify, recognize the ills that plague the migration sector. That is important. And I would like to, so in this statement, I would like to focus on some issues that he has covered. And at the same time, I will try to provide some answer to the questions that has been posed by some of the audience members. So it has been already clear that irregular migration, often referred to as undocumented or illegal migration, is a global phenomenon shaped by a myriad of complex factors. And the keynote speaker definitely tried his best to identify those factors. And his mixed method is definitely effective because he has interacted with as many as 100 returning migrants. So the questions to some of the answers to some of the questions are there. If we look at the demographic pattern, the profile of the returnees, you will see who they are. 92% of them are unmarried. That is, they have always more tendency to take risk. They can take risks. 68% or 62% have got their relatives living abroad. That is how diaspora in the country of destination can influence the decision of going abroad through whatever means. So this is important. But I would like to add one thing. So this is absolutely my personal opinion. But I think, so there are two things. One is motivation and the other is driver. I think as far as Bangladesh is concerned, the first and foremost driver for a Bangladeshi to migrate irregularly is the opportunity of, is the presence of that kind of opportunity. I mean, opportunity of going to a country through an illegal path. This is the most important, significant driver. And coupled with this, there are some other opportunities, and you have already discussed. Another opportunity is external. That is the perception of the existence of safe haven in certain destination country. Once you are there, no matter regularly or irregularly. I would like to recall sometimes back in one newspaper, I found a Bangladesh ambassador in a European country saying, there has been I quote, unquote, I quote, there has been a public perception that that country, I just intentionally put it hidden, that country is very lenient towards foreigners. That is why many people believe that they will get legal status at some point after somehow entering the country using different routes. Note the phrasing, somehow. So going there itself is rewarding. And that is the perception. So there are two opportunities. One, opportunity of having an irregular route in this country, an opportunity of some allurement that some people are there, some places are there where you perceive that there will be a safe haven for you. Vis-a-vis, there is another absence of opportunity. The absence of opportunity is the absence of ample legal opportunity of going abroad. So this is very important. How we can combine all these factors, balance all these factors, and make things better than what it is. So sometimes I think it is frequently argued in different research papers that economic hardship is one of the primary motivations for irregular migration in many countries. In fact, as the keynote speaker was speaking, I was trying to see whether there is any economic profile of the outbound workers, those who undertook. I didn't find it. Maybe he skipped it or he didn't mention it. But I think this economic hardship does not hold very good in the case of Bangladesh. The question is why? Number one, Bangladesh now, in Bangladesh, the rate of ultra poverty has come down to 5.6%. And the undertaking of going abroad is very, very costly. So for a person who is ultra poor or suffering from economic hardship, it is really difficult for him to undertake that journey. So somebody has been compelled to go to a European country just because of his hardship does not hold very good in the case of Bangladesh. There are other reasons, as I have mentioned, and as already have been explored by the keynote speaker. And there are other reasons why people would like to go to. But I think if you want me to say it in a word or two, it is better economic prospect, a better life. That is, in short, the reason. Lack of opportunities, political instability and conflict, family reunification. This could be settled some other issues, but not the major one. I have been given only 10 minutes to speak, so I'm not going to take questions for too long. I would like to share with you some of the things that I think you as academia should know, what the government of Bangladesh is doing. And here, before I go on to say what we are doing, I expected the keynote speaker, the researcher that has been done on this issue, to come up with some policy recommendations with policy implications. I don't know whether he did it, but it was not presented. Because hundreds and thousands of problems are there. So what? Problems are there. And what is the implication of problems and how we can overcome those? That is the crux of the thing. That is what we need to address. And I would request the very hardworking researcher, in fact, I think there was a couple of researchers or the team, to look into the way forward, how we can do better than what we are doing. Some of the other things that also can be explored. Has the cultural trait to do something with this tendency of going abroad, risking somebody's life, as you say, gambling with life chances? I think there could be some focus from that point of view. In Bangladesh, there is a sort of thing called success through a very shortcut way. Advocism is very, very pervasive. Achieving something for the time being without looking for what is going to happen to him, without looking before and after. You just indulge in the present. This is perhaps a South Asian trend. A quick I think problems are there. We have identified it. Now, how to face them, how to overcome those challenges. And just let me say, this is what the government of Bangladesh is doing by adopting a whole of government and whole of society approach, where our international development partners like European Union, International Organization for Migration, International Labour Organizations, UN Women, our local entrepreneurs, local civic societies are involved with us, plus the whole of government, where the Ministry of Home Affairs and other ministries concerned are working in a collaborative approach. That is the approach. Number one is to make people realize that the thing that they are doing or they are bent on doing is not right. Sensitization. So that we can make the aspiring migrants make informed decision. Unfortunately, I think even in your title, dreams are there. There is a word called dreams. So they are pursuing a dream which perhaps is just an illusion, nothing but an illusion. So we need to tell them that this is an illusion, this is a fiction, not a fact. We have taken some collaborative approach. I would like to tell you that Italy is one of the important countries in Europe which has hosted some 150,000 Bangladeshi workers. And we have got some publicity campaign in collaboration with Europe. And we are doing it on a regular basis with other partners. So as I said, that the presence of opportunity of going to an European country through illegal way is a risk. How to encounter this problem is to create easily accessible opportunities for legal migration. That is what we are doing with different European countries like Greece and Italy. And I'm thankful to European Union that they have adopted a very good project called talent partnership. So this will enable our aspirant migrants, especially those who are dreaming of going to a European country, to have the kind of skill that will match the requirement in the European market and go there through the legal channel. We need to reinforce it. We need to make it stronger. And I would like to urge European Union to just go for more action so that we can really see that it is in place. So we have the zero tolerance to irregular migration. That is the policy. How we can use those beautiful rhetorics into practice. Here comes the question of enforcement of law. And we'd like to say that we need to enforce the law, existing law, more forcefully so that we can curb illegal migration. Let me tell you, the government of Bangladesh has enacted the anti-human trafficking law in 2012. Besides the Overseas Employment and Migration Acts, 2013 has been amended to register middlemen and bring them to accountability. In the concept paper that was handed over to me, it said that you are going to discuss the role of middlemen, how they can influence irregular migration. In fact, this is what we have done in order to bring them to book, in order to bring them to some accountability framework. We have amended the law of 2013, which is called the Overseas Employment and Migrants Act. So we are committed to partnering with all concerned stakeholders, including the whole of government and whole of societies. As I have said, particularly our engagement regarding curbing of illegal migration and promoting legal migration with international development partners such as European Union, Swiss Development Agency, UN organizations such as IOM, ILO, UN Women has become more frequent, deeper, stronger, and more effective than ever before. So to conclude, I would like to say, when opportunities for illegal migrants are drastically curbed, vis-a-vis opportunities for regular migration are ample and easily accessible, a great deal of irregular migration will be automatically done away with. So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to share my insight and thoughts with you. We'll be looking forward to more engagement between the academia and the administrator, because as you know, migration is a collective responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. It should not be left alone to a handful of people like me, an administrator, who knows how to do certain things, but who does not know how to formulate a better policy, perhaps. So thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, for being here with us, and you for your kind attention. Thank you. Joy Bangla.
Thank you, Dr. Salehin, for giving us guidance and continuous support to grow this center further. Now, our very own family member, who is leading the North-South University from the front, none other than Professor Atikul Islam, the Vice Chancellor of North-South University. My extreme privilege to welcome him to the podium to deliver his speech. Honorable Vice Chancellor.
Good afternoon already, everyone. First of all, let me thank you all for being here, particularly those who have come from outside of NSU. Let me formally address Ahmed Munir Salehin Sahib, who is Senior Secretary of the Ministry of Expatriate Welfare. I was enjoying his speech. He is a very well-trained person also in research. He went to a very elite university called Flinders University in South Australia, where my visit was only for playing sports, and I enjoyed their gymnasium. And the view from there after dusk, was fantastic views. Anyway, I do not normally hear such eloquent, logical, and well-structured speeches from bureaucrats. I'm not saying it in a bad sense. Bureaucracy is absolutely essential. They run bureaus. So thank you, Dr. Salehin once again, and I was also very impressed by Dr. Bernard Spenier's position on immigration, the way he upheld his diplomatic responsibilities, as well as trying to be very free and frank about these immigration things. Professor Abdul Rab Khan is the dean of the relevant faculty. He has also been appointed by the approved by the Honorable Chancellor for being the treasurer of this university for the next 4 years. Professor Sheikh Tawfiq always does lots of things. He is a busybody, and it's because of him that we get, mostly because of him. You know, I don't want to basically spoil him. He organizes these things well as the chair of as the director of the SAPG. Dr. Salim Reza, the keynote speaker, has done an excellent job. I'll come to that maybe later, what the role of the researcher is in relation to policymaking, as has been raised by our Honorable Senior Secretary. Okay, so my colleagues, distinguished visitors from other places, participants, I am always placed in this kind of situation by Professor Hawk and Sheikh Tawfiq, I mean by Professor Shoaibul Hawk. There are too many Hawks here, so Sheikh Tawfiq is also a Hawk. So anyway, where I know very little about things, but I have to speak because I'm the Vice Chancellor, I have to speak. Okay. Immigration was not as regulated in the world as it is now in the modern days. For the last couple of centuries, it has been being regulated very strictly. You know, when the people from Angles and Saxony and Jutes, you know, went to England, we call them Anglo-Saxons, and colonized the whole place or inhabited the whole place and basically started ruling it. No one raised an eyebrow. Went from 1605 to 1776, there are hundreds of thousands, millions of Europeans, led by the Irish, I think, crossed the Atlantic and went to the United States and other American countries, and started colonies such as USA and Canada. There was not much of a regulation there. And when the Spaniards conquered South America, of course, local population followed them. And that's why we have all these Spanish-speaking countries in there. You know, you go to Argentina, you find places like Caminito and things such as Conventisha, where initial migrants used to stay. There's not much of regulation. No one said don't come, because there was a need to work on the agricultural land. There was a need to work in the mines, etc., etc. So migrants were anywhere welcome. Migration became regulated excuse me, in the 19th century and 20th century more. I'm a layman, so I may be quite wrong. Don't take my words for granted. And then we see increasingly more and more regulation migration. Let us not forget one thing, that whenever a society feels threatened, not by so much that the migrants will take up the jobs, but when they feel threatened that they might be swamped by people of other culture, they resent it. So there's obviously, from a social point of view, there is a limit to what proportion of your population mix can be migrants. People with different looks, different color of skin, different accents. Accent go away in the second generation, the third generation. but they will accommodate different food habits. In Australia, we heard that, oh, don't let many Mauritians to come because they eat goat meat. Terrible thing. So now, again, you will see internal conflict. Those so-called far-right people, for whatever reason they move to the far-right corner, versus those who are the farmers, employers, they want workers. So you'll find there are not enough fruit pickers in season for picking fruits in lots of Western countries. So the farmers want the fruit pickers to come or to stay there permanently to work on the farm. But then you have the other group who resent people that do not have their kind of accent, do not have their kind of looks, etc. So that is so intangible, and that is so personal, so emotional. You cannot get rid of that entirely. That's the basis of so-called nationalism. So, it goes to the heart of human nature. So you've got to be careful about that. Otherwise, you can see very dysfunctional consequences, very unhappy situations. As you've seen in Uganda at one stage, all the Indians were driven out in one day. They had to leave their shops and everything. Some of them got killed and flee to other countries. So you've got to also understand the tolerance or the ability of a country to absorb migrants. It's not always determined by the economic factors. If you look at the economies of migration, there has been lots of studies. And immigration to a country has always been beneficial. It lifts internal demand. There is more demand for housing and other things. There's more employment. The GDP goes up. And there's only benefits economically of having higher migration in lots of countries, particularly the Western countries. But then you got to balance it with having to see some people, some do start working in lungis in the middle of the Sydney city. Those are difficulties. I have some personal experience with the so-called irregular migrants. Back in 1980s, I was the president of, not like, I'll tell the story later, of the Bangladesh Australia Society, or Bangladesh Association in Australia. So there would be these so-called illegal migrants going to Sydney, and somehow they would have my telephone number. So I'll get a call about 8 o'clock at night, just from Bangladesh, nowhere to go. I am standing in front of this building in Oxford Street. Could you do something for me? I was a poor lecturer. So I'd go there, maybe give the fellow $10 or $20, and then go for Shiraz's restaurant and say, look, let him stay for some days. He'll find something, he can eat in your restaurant free and he'll work. So those are the kind of things I used to do. And there was a lawyer called David Bittel. He specialized in Bangladeshi immigration. David died a couple of years ago of cancer. It's very unfortunate. He used to take them up because one thing good about a civilized country is that they give legal rights to even those people. So the thing that would happen is they will be sent to the detention center. And in a lot of cases, I had to write applications. I know the lawyer would say, I think, can you do a draft or send it to the villa or detention center? That will stop them from being deported, and then I'll come and Monday I'll take up the case. So those are the sort of, I really don't know what can and how much can a government do even those kind of situations, whether it's the host government or the sending government, whatever it is. The government did not send them, by the way. Once I remember a boy called me from a detention center. I was in Perth at the time, and there's a detention center near the airport. And he called from there and said, I'm so-and-so from Noshingde. I have been in this center for 3 years. So it's a Hindu boy. I said, yeah, what can I do for you? He said, I haven't had Ilish Mas for 3 years. Could you bring me some Ilish Mas torkari? So I told my wife, okay, as a boy, young boy has been there for 3 years. Ilish Mas khana eta kotha holo. So I asked my wife to cook, all these Bengali type foods and also Ilish Mas in particular. So they have terrible times sometimes. Others do very well. The first millionaire in Australia among Bangladeshis is someone who jumped the ship and swam ashore and then was very successful. So these stories create a situation back home that if you go there, you're in the heaven, nothing can adversely affect you. But that's not the experience of everyone there. Anyway, immigration, irregular immigration will be there as long as there is disparity between countries, not only in terms of economic indicators, but also rights of different types, healthcare, social security. So if you have standard of education, quality of education, availability of education for one's kids, all those things so bear in that decision. So as our Honorable Secretary made it very clear, there is no economic necessity for people to leave Bangladesh. I agree with him. So 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people wouldn't have left. The people that live now, there's a shortage of workers in Bangladesh, in the villages, to work in the farms. People can their basic needs, food and clothing, shelter, are somewhat satisfied. We don't have a crisis situation in this country now, but people will go because of lure of even better life. And that will remain, they will risk, young people will risk their life, that's the nature of it. And the question is what we can do about it. The first thing is for us to know what is happening, why is it happening, etc. But this other thing that what policies should be taken, obviously the researcher can give policy prescriptions. Now, as you know, in any research, you got the syntactics and semantics and then the pragmatics. So what? So what do? We do send from NSU and SIPG in particular, we do send policy recommendations to the government from time to time. And I'm sure one will go from this meeting also. But again, there is controversy about the role of the researcher in the whole spectrum. The researcher's role basically is to find out relationship between variables. You have the independent variables and you have a dependent variable, right? So you just say, we found this and that. We found that if Bangladesh is ready to take inflation of, say, to a level of 20-25%, or unemployment will go down. If Bangladesh is going to beat down inflation to 2%, unemployment will go up to, say, 30%. So you can show different levels of unemployment with inflation, the trade-off. But the researcher is not the person who should tell someone what is the best in inflation-unemployment relationship. That is for the people's representatives sitting in the parliament through their ministries to decide what is good for the population, because they have been authorized, empowered by the population to make those kind of decisions. But the researchers should basically show if this is X, what will the impact on Y? So you can show a spectrum of possible policy actions. It's up to the government on behalf of the people to decide which actions are in the national interest, in public interest, that sort of stuff. So, I was trained to speak for 75 minutes at a time as a young lecturer at the University of New South Wales. So I can go on and on and on, but I'm sure I'm standing between yourself and lunch, and it's not a good thing to do. I learned quite a lot from the speakers, from everyone, and I thank SIPG or the little center inside it on migration for organizing this. The whole idea, we do want to be a university that is engaged with the government, with professions, with industry. And this is a fantastic example of good engagement. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, VC sir, for your wonderful speech. At this stage, I think we do have a token of appreciation. Our RA will take this token of appreciation. We'll hand over this token of appreciation to our guest of honor and our chief guest, and will be handed by our honorable VC sir. Inside of this bag, we do have books and publications from SIPG, Center for Peace Studies, and also CPS. And guest of honor. Okay. We are coming to the end of the session. Before we finish, I'd like to welcome our Honorable Treasurer of North-South University, Professor Abdul Rab Khan, to give vote of thanks. Thank you.
Well, I also do not want to stand between lunch and the session. The session is sufficiently enlightened. So it's my objective to propose vote of thanks to all the distinguished participants, guests or not participants. So first of all, I would like to point out that we have in the person of chief guest and honorable and a guest of honor, we have two dimensions. They are professionals in one area, but they are academician, excellent academician. So I think thank you very much for your very brilliant contribution to the purpose of this, seminar. Thank you very much for that. I have also two distinguished, discussants who are also, they're enlightened in their own field. Ambassador Shohidul Haq, the professorial fellow, and also Bangabandhu Chair Fellow at Delhi University. Thank you very much for your contribution. We always, whenever we need, we get your support. Thank you very much for that. And also Professor Rozana Rashid from the Dhaka University. Thank you very much for your brilliant contribution. Thank you very much for that. And also we have, the keynote speaker, and also one of our colleagues. Both of them are colleagues, and you have contributed very brilliantly in your contribution. Thank you very much for that. And also I will thank the online, participants. They also contributed by their presence here. And it is my proposal that we thank you very much. And also I will invite you for joining lunch. Thank you very much.
We are about to finish, but before that, one author from the book was not present when we took the photograph. So I'd like to request once again, all the authors, please come forward, especially the authors, so that we can take another photo with you. With books, please. Thank you. Rahman sir was absent, so While they are taking photograph, I would like to make the announcement. Thank you. Now we are coming to the end of today's session. Once again, I express my sincere gratitude to all our distinguished